bit of an insight into what it takes to land your first full-time contract so relevant for all your sports scientists listening in, even personal trainers that are interested in moving over to working in pro sport and looking at doing their sports science degree. And just allows you to essentially maximize your time and have a bit more direction and clarity on where you need to focus on, because success really does leave clues. And this scorecard is a great way for you to have a bit of a yardstick on a bit of an order on how you're going. Typically, it seems to take, and this will change depending on your circumstance, of course, and the opportunities that are in the industry when you graduate, but typically it will take anywhere between 3 and 4 years of experience at state league level before you're making the interview stage. So really important that as soon as you start your degree, you're gaining experience and looking to get yourself a foot in the door at a pro club, either at semi-pro level or at least in an athletic environment like a high school or NAB league and the like. So I'll just share my screen for those tuning in on Instagram. Feel free to head over to our YouTube channel if you want a visual. And of course, if you're listening on the podcast and you want a visual, then feel free to head over to our YouTube channel where you can check out what I'm referencing here in terms of the scorecard. I'll also add a link. This is free to download, so I highly recommend if you're a sports scientist looking to work in pro sport, download this spreadsheet. I've put it together. It just gives you a bit of a framework year by year. Like I said, it takes on average, and certainly I can attest it took me 4 years at semi-pro level working at Box Hill Hawks before I landed my first full-time job at Hawthorn Footy Club. And it seemed to be the sweet spot for most practitioners. Some people, it was 6 to 8 years working at state league level. You got to bide your time because there might not be no one moving at the club that you're working at, or simply there's just the times that you go for roles, because there's not going to be many roles that pop up each year. There might be 3 or 4 that you make the interview stage at. You might be going against some coaches that just have far more experience than you. So you've got to bide your time and wait another year, and that can roll on a little bit, and everyone will have their own journey. But what you can focus on, obviously you can't control time, but what you can do is maximize the experience that you're getting in those years. So I've broken it down into 4 seasons. As you can see, there's 4 tabs here: season 1, season 2, season 3, season 4. And this allows you, while you're finding your feet at that semi-pro club season 1, you can chip away at some other goals. So the criteria, I looked at that questionnaire of what the practitioners wrote down and just looked for any trends and relevant, and that's what guided the point system here. So more points towards areas that seem quite popular that coaches achieve throughout their years leading up to getting their first full-time job, as well as I looked at what would give you a biggest competitive advantage. So clearly you're going to have to get your sports science degree. That's your ticket to being qualified. So there's not as many points, for example, for that degree, because thousands of people get that every year. That's not going to allow you to stand out against the crowd. But something like managing your own program, strength and conditioning program at any level will. So there's more points, obviously, to that. And then also I've taken into account when putting the points together, what's going to prepare you, best to make an impact at your first full-time job, because I'm sure if you're working towards getting your first full-time contract, that's not the end goal. That's just the start of your journey. And it certainly was for me. So as soon as you get that first full-time job, you're now living your dream of being able to hone your craft and your purpose in terms of applying your knowledge and your trade every day, full-time. But that's obviously the beginning. So I've added in some points around what's going to help you from my own experience and speaking to other practitioners, what's going to help you make an impact when you finally get that first full-time contract. So as you can see, year 1 here, some pretty straightforward systems here. So I've just broken it down on the top tabs of the months that you would look to achieve these, and then it's a point system. And on a general guide for year 1, if you get above 35 points in year 1, you're on track for getting a contract at the end of your degree, at the end of the 4th season. If you're between 25 and 34 points, you need some work. So you're just falling behind, and you'll be playing a bit of catch up later on in your years. And if you're less than 24 points, it's time to get busy, because if you just keep going down that road, then you won't even make the interview stage, let alone be able to land a job. So complete your personal training certificate. That will get you 10 points. That's an example. Australian Strength and Conditioning Association Level 1, 3 points. Design a strength and power program that goes for 12 weeks. So you're applying your periodization knowledge, and that's 3 points. Design and follow a 12-week strength and conditioning program. Conditioning program. That's 3 points. So it's key to be able to design it. That's really important. So you have the knowledge. But equally as important, I think, is being able to actually practice it and practice it on yourself. Year 1, year 2, even for the rest of your career, you're going to be using your body as a bit of a lab. Obviously, as you get more and more experience coaching and applying your program, you're going to be gaining a lot of that. But while you're not in that position and you're not actually able to apply your trade on yourself. Use yourself as a bit of a lab. So that's really, really important. Athletes will sniff it out straight away if they can tell you don't train. Doesn't mean you have to be an elite athlete, but you need to be able to experience these different methodologies that you eventually one day, hopefully, will use with pro athletes. And then that falls into facilitating a community level pre-season and in-season football program. So this will give you 15 points. So that's the most on year 1, is actually designing your own and facilitating your own pre-season. Now that can be at any level. I haven't defined the level at that stage. So that could be, when I say community, that could be your under 12s. That could be reserve grade, whatever it is. Just be able to run a program and facilitate a program, get used to leading and presenting your program and building buy-in and designing periodized training blocks and working with the coaches. Hopefully there's some form of a medical team at the club that you can work with, helping out with rehabilitation, have a game day role. You might be runner, so getting involved in the technical side, assisting the coaches with the footy drills. Just immerse yourself in the sport. And the last 2, gain 10% of body weight, so gaining some muscle mass, so following like a hypertrophy type program or just a heavy strength program and getting used to gaining muscle, because if you're going to work in pro sport, there's going to be athletes, especially in contact sports, that are going to need to gain muscle at times, whether they've had an operation and they've lost size, or like a surgery, or they've had or they're young and developing, and you're preparing them to be able to compete at the highest level over the next couple of years. They need to be able to gain some weight. Equally, at times there'll be some opportunities and areas where athletes will need to drop body fat. So experiencing that yourself. So losing 10% of your body weight from body fat in a program. So that will get you 2 points. So that's year 1. Moving over to season 2. To be on track here, we need a minimum of 45 points. You need some work if you range between 35 and 44 points. Time to get busy if you're less than 34 points, okay? So if you're behind the 8 ball in season 1, make sure you're on track in season 2, otherwise you're falling behind. All right, action taken here. So start your Bachelor's of Sports Science degree. Year 1, you've practiced at community level, you've run a program, you're qualified in personal training, so perhaps you're building a bit of a business, you're working one-on-one with athletes, so you're really experiencing what it's like to be a coach, you're living that lifestyle of training and practicing what you preach. By the end of that year, you should have a pretty strong indication of motivation and drive on whether you want to work at the top. So that's where we want to start now, our Bachelor of Sports Science. Now, you may have started that in season 1, that's okay. You automatically get 15 points. But if you haven't, definitely need to start by season 2. Get yourself to the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association conference. Great opportunity to keep a finger on the pulse in the research and applied research. Also a good opportunity to meet lots of practitioners in the industry that are currently full-time, semi-pro, part-time, and you never know where those networks can lead you over your career. But it's also quite a motivating community to be a part of as well, being around lots of like-minded people. So highly recommended that one. I've been to 3 in my time. So every few years, I like to jump into that conference. Set and achieve performance goals to increase your max strength and reactive strength. So like I talked about, year 1 was sort of more basic around like body composition goals, designing strength and power, just designing some conditioning programs and following that. Now we're looking at a bit more pointed at maximizing your max strength. So the example might be a box squat, a weighted chin up, and a bench press. How do you get all those lifts up over the 12-week program? So putting a program in place. What's your frequency of those lifts going to be like? What type of methodology are you going to lean on? Is it like a 5x5? Is it a 5-3-1, wave loading? Different things that you can practice and see how effective they are. Compete in an endurance type event. It might be a sprint triathlon event. It might be a high rocks event. It could be half marathon, 10K time trial, whatever it is, but some form of aerobically challenging endurance event that you need to train for and practice competing in. So you get 3 points for that. Assist in as a strength and conditioning coach in a semi-pro club. So now you really want to get yourself away from that community sport and start to get into a semi-pro sporting club. So for me, that was the Box Hill Hawks, where I applied my apprenticeship. And year one, that was when the development league was in place. So I had the opportunity of helping the developing players with their strength and conditioning program. So they weren't playing VFL, but their aim was to play VFL footy over the next couple of years, and it was helping them from a physical point of view in developing their size and strength and speed and power. So that can be an example there. So get yourself into a semi-pro club as quickly as you can. Obviously, nowadays there's also AFLW, VFLW, so there's a lot more opportunities in team field sports now than there was sort of 6-7 years ago. Experiment with fueling strategies. So work with a dietitian or work with the club's dietitian and just practicing different fueling strategies for your training. That will work quite nicely with the endurance event. Like I said, training for an endurance event and practice some different things. So you've got a bit of an idea of what athletes go through when they're preparing themselves for game day. And then experiment with mindfulness and meditation. If there's a sports psychologist at the club, see if they can put a recording together for you and just experience mindfulness meditation. This is something that's really common during the week for pro athletes for their relaxation and to really initiate that recovery process from a mental point of view, but also giving them some coping strategies to handle stress, which I think is really important for strength and conditioning coaches. And then having some visualization techniques as well on game day. So start experimenting with that so you've got a bit of an understanding of what that's all about. And like I said, to give yourself on track, you need above 45 points. In blue is what I did in year two. Okay, so year one, I got 41 points. So you can compare what sort of my journey, I guess, if that's something you're interested in. Year two, looking back, I got 46 points. Now we're going into season 3 of your strength and conditioning career. So we're starting to get a little bit closer towards more responsibility at your semi-pro club. If you're on track, you need a minimum of 45 points. If you need some work, it's going to be between 35 and 44 points. And time to get busy for those less than 34 points. Okay, so to give yourself 10 points, develop your own online coaching business for athletes. So this is where for the last couple of years, you've developed your personal training business or strength and conditioning one-on-one. Perhaps you're working with athletes in the gym. And now we want to start to develop an online business that's something that you can still run as a side hustle when you land that first full-time contract. And that will be really handy when you're in between jobs. Obviously, we know pro sport isn't the most stable or secure industry. There's going to be periods over your career. If you look at potentially the next 20 years, there's going to be a period where maybe 3 to 4 months where you're looking for the next gig. And that's where it'll be handy to have your own income that you can control. So start shifting from that face-to-face where you're ultimately trading time for money. Now we want to start thinking about what's a business that can be more scalable. So whether it be a membership, education, whether it be online programs that people can follow, there's things that you can create and they're passive in nature, or they're just highly scalable. Obviously, if you've got a personal training business, there's only so much time. Maybe you can train 20 people a week. So if you were doing a really good job and those 20 referred you 100 different members, you probably could only take on another 5. So there's 95 people that you're going to have to refer on. That's money that's not going to business. Whereas if you've got an online coaching business where there's programs involved, there's different tiers, all 100 of those can fit into one of your tiers, and that can ultimately elevate your revenue. So start chipping away at that. That's not too relevant, though, to climbing the ladder and getting your first full-time contract. That's more allowing you longevity in the game. Work as a strength and power coach or reconditioning coach at VFL, NAB League or VFLW levels. So if you're working with the young players year 2, now start to look towards asking for more responsibility. So whether you be like the head strength and power coach, where you're managing the weights program for the senior VFL men's program or VFLW program, look to get, so that would be a great opportunity. You're sort of 2IC usually when you're in that role. More and more now, we're starting to see this reconditioning role at state league level. So either a physiotherapist or a strength and conditioning coach is managing and coordinating the injured players and liaising with both the performance staff and medical staff and the coaches to give the injured athletes the best program to return them to performance. So getting your experience on that. That's something that I never experienced over my 4 years in semi-pro sport that I wish I did. So if you can get opportunity to help out with the medical staff in reconditioning, that would be fantastic. It was not until my final year of full-time sport where I was working a little bit more closely with the head physio. And now I'm doing that full-time at a different footy club. So I wish early on I did more experience in that rehab role. Network with a coach or work in a network with a coach who's either a reconditioning coach, strength and power coach, or head of performance at elite level. So start catching up, whether it be just some phone calls here or there, might be catching up for a coffee, however it is, start to build your network, start to engage with people that are in roles that you're working towards. Really, really important. Sorry, I forgot to give the points there. So 15 points if you give yourself that strength and power coach or reconditioning coach, 5 points for each person that you catch up with for a coffee or speak over the phone for every catch up. And the last one, learn a new physical craft. It might be yoga, wrestling, Olympic weightlifting, track and field. You get 5 points per 4 months. So you're really getting yourself involved in that skill. Really important. A lot of the times in pro sport, you're demoing because athletes are highly visual. So it is quite helpful if you're proficient in those movements that you're demoing. So whether it be teaching them how to do a triple switch, if you've done some track and field, you're going to be quite competent and be a good visual for that. Plus, you'll know what that feels like as well, both from a loading perspective, but also how to, if you've gone through developing those movement competencies, and you've gone through that process from going from maybe incompetent to competent, you'll have a better idea of being exposed to different drills and how effective those drills are in teaching athletes, as well as things like getting an understanding of the benefits of yoga and actually working on stretch and lengthening and the importance of breath with relaxation. Wrestling, we know the athlete that is super strong in the gym but doesn't transfer that onto their contest sport. So that's where wrestling can help bridge the gap. You don't need to be a wrestling coach, but if you've got an understanding of body positioning and perhaps you might need to be able to wrestle in like reconditioning positions. I've definitely found that. So if you've got a bit of better understanding, you'll be a better training buddy for that athlete that you're doing the wrestling with. And also this will just help reinvigorate your coaching, I've found as well, when you're learning new skills. And then the final year, this is the biggest year. So this is where for those listening in, maybe they're graduating at the end of the year. They're going to be putting their resumes out, looking for a job, speaking to as many different clubs as they can come September, and looking to land their first full-time contract. This is the year where to be on track, you need over 300 points. So my final year, I landed 330. Need some work if you're between 150 and 299 points. And time to get busy if you're less than 149 points. Okay, so if you've started a Masters of High Performance Sport, which wasn't my case, I started mine later on in my career, so it's not essential. That was also quite consistent with the other practitioners that filled out the questionnaire I sent out. They all had their Bachelor of Sports Science, of course, but not many actually had their masters. So that's something you can chip away at later on, either on the job. So it's not essential, but if you do go for it, then you give yourself 25 points. Workers ahead performance. So obviously having your master's is not going to be a reason you don't get a job. Typically, usually it'll be experience, but it can't hurt, of course. So if you get the opportunity to get it, then go for it. And that might be someone that started their Bachelor's of Sports Science season 1 and they did it full time. They finished season 3. While you're still gaining experience in semi-pro level, you might want to get your master's done in that year. Workers ahead of a performance at a VFL, NAB League or VFLW, where you're managing and facilitating the preseason and in-season. You get 100 points for each. So there's 200 points there. By managing your own semi-pro program, that is going to be the biggest competitive advantage you can get, I believe, in stacking up against the rest of the competition. So if you can get that managerial experience at semi-pro level, you're giving yourself a great opportunity and great chance to land your first full-time gig. Find a mentor to challenge and support you. So this will get you 20 points. Complete your Bachelor of Sports Science degree, of course, will get you 50. Complete your Australian Strength and Conditioning Level 2 will get you 20 points. And intern at a pro club for a whole preseason and season. So if you can manage that as well, which I was lucky enough to do. So as I was the strength and power coach at Box Hill Hawks, I was interning at Hawthorn Football Club a couple of days a week, in preseason 3 days in season 2, where you're fly on the wall, you're assisting where you can. And I was completing my Bachelor of Sports Science degree. So that allowed me to be in a really good position when the person above me at Box Hill Hawks and Hawthorn decided to move on. And I was lucky enough to interview for that role and land that job. So hopefully this scorecard gives you some clarity, gives you a bit of direction. I know a lot of you have been asking questions around this. What timing, where should I prioritize what in terms of ASCA, in terms of my degree, in terms of work experience. You'll see towards this point system how heavily I've put it towards experience and gaining new roles. So whether it be reconditioning roles, strength and power roles, athlete development, and then managing. So trying to get exposure to all of those over these 4 years. And this will ultimately give you a best advantage at making the interview stage and landing that gig. If you want help with this and you're in your year 4 or even year 3, I'm running a certificate in October. I would love to be involved. We've got 10 spots open. If this is something you're interested in, or you want some mentoring, I've got some one-on-one mentoring, one spot available in August opening up. Make sure to email me at jack@preparelikeapro.com, or you can message me on socials. If there's some free content that you want to read to help maximize your coaching career, there's some blog posts to check out. So if you look up on our website, propel-like-apro.com, Pathways to AFL, that's one blog post. Another one, Career Opportunities in Sports Science and Strength and Conditioning, is blog post 2. And then Transitioning from Semi-Pro to Elite Level is blog post 3. There's also a couple of podcasts to search for in Spotify or iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcasts. So episode 108, From Intern to Your First Pro Contract, would be a great episode. If you found a lot of value in this scorecard, make sure to listen to that episode. And top 10 tips to maximize your AFL internship. So that would be another episode to check out. Academy members, there's 2 presentations, Get Better Plan presentations that you haven't listened to yet. Make sure to check it out. You can search for these in the Academy when you log into the dashboard. So first one, my top resources to get better at coaching. And number 2, how to work as an AFL strength and conditioning coach. Our next Get Better Plan episode for strength and conditioning coaches to catch up with me live for a presentation and a Q&A will be on the 25th of July at 4 p.m. for the next couple of weeks. It's going to be around recovery methods, what is the latest research, and how to apply it. So if you're interested in getting a better understanding or perhaps a refresher on recovery to help your athletes, tune in there. And like always, I'm more than happy to jump and have a bit of a chat, chew the fat after that presentation. So feel free to stick around at the end. But thank you for everyone that's tuned in. Remember to download this scorecard. You can find all the links that I referenced in our show notes. Subscribe to the podcast. If you can, leave a review. That would be fantastic. It allows us to reach more listeners. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode.